I was at my uncle's house, with a tickling in my belly and an insatiable desire fluttering in my head. Yes, you're listening right, I was in the mood for male company, the kind that makes you think naughty thoughts. But what do you do when you're at your aunt and uncle's house, and your aunt is going to party? Well, if you're like me, you go for the naughtier and more exciting option. So, armed with my courage, and maybe a little madness, I decided to go in search of what I longed for. But where did I direct my steps? Guess, to my uncle's room. So, I was there, standing in front of the door of my uncle's room, with a lot of adrenaline and a mischievous smile on my lips. What was he doing? Well, that's what I was about to find out. Slowly, I turned the doorknob and opened it cautiously, as if I were entering forbidden territory. And, well, in a way, it was. Upon entering the room, my eyes fell on him, my uncle, sleeping peacefully. He was shirtless. That made my heart race a little, you know what I mean. I stood watching my uncle sleep, as if it were the last sight on earth. And I must admit, even sleeping, he looked quite handsome. But, no, I wasn't there to admire his appearance while he slept, although, I won't deny, it was an added bonus. He was there for other reasons that were slowly becoming clearer in my head as he watched. My thoughts began to wander, imagining what it would be like to wake him from sleep with a soft kiss. Well, let's let our imaginations run wild for a moment. But before he could give vent to my desires, something happened. My uncle stirred, moaned softly, and then fell back into a deep sleep. Wow, that was interesting. Without making much noise, and moving with the cunning of a feline, I lay down next to him on the bed. Every step was calculated, every movement measured so as not to disturb his sleep. I slipped under the covers with the same delicacy with which one touches a flower, covering myself up to the neck, while he remained immersed in his dream. My uncle slept pleasantly, unaware of my presence next to him. His breathing was soft, and there was no indication that he might wake up at any moment. It was like he was sleeping soundly, and I was stalking him in the dark. As I stood there, so close to him, yet so far away, a wave of emotions washed over me. There was a tingle inside me, a feeling of adventure that made me feel alive and excited. What would happen next? How would he react if he discovered my presence in his bed, so intimate and personal? My thoughts began to wander down dangerous paths, imagining increasingly playful scenarios. What if he pulled me a little closer and whispered in his ear, tempting him with promises of something more? Or if he let my hands roam the sheets, exploring what he could find? The idea was so tempting that I could barely contain the excitement bubbling inside me. He was about to give vent to my darkest impulses when suddenly something happened. My uncle moved slightly in bed, but he did not wake up completely. He gave a soft sigh and then fell asleep again, as if my presence next to him meant nothing at all. I breathed a sigh of relief, but I also felt a lot of adrenaline. However, determination shone in my eyes, as I gazed at his calm face in the darkness of the room. This night was not going to end like this. No, she was determined to make this moment count, to push the limits and take this situation to a new level of intensity. I stayed next to him, with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. I had come this far, I couldn't stop now. So, I gathered all my courage and dared to take the next step. With shaky but determined movements, I moved closer to him and hugged him slowly. I felt his body heat radiating through the fabric of the sheets, and a surge of electricity coursed through my body. It was so close, so intimate, that I could barely contain the emotion I had inside of me. The feeling of having him in my arms was very strong, a mixture of desire and fear that made me feel like a stalker. How would he react when he woke up and found me there, so close? Uncertainty invades me, but at the same time, that feeling of danger and excitement excited me even more. He was playing with fire, I knew it, but I couldn't resist the temptation to keep going, to explore where this crazy night would take me. My uncle was still asleep, oblivious to my presence and my dark thoughts. He sighed softly and settled into bed, but showed no signs of waking up. Was he dreaming about something, or just enjoying a peaceful, restful sleep? The question hung in the air, but he didn't have time to look for answers. I was too busy living in the moment, letting myself be carried away by the current of emotions that carried me towards the unknown. And so, I stayed next to him, hugging him gently so he wouldn't wake up. I liked the situation, that was undeniable, but I also knew that it couldn't last forever. Sooner or later, he would wake up and have to face the consequences. But for now, that was the last thing he wanted to think about. Because in this moment, in this magical and fleeting moment, it was just him and I, lost in a sea of sensations. And there was no room for regret or doubt. There was only room for love, passion, and my unbridled thoughts. Suddenly, I felt his arm move and surround me in a hug. It was such a tender gesture, it took my breath away for a moment. He, completely asleep and oblivious to reality, hugged me as if I were the most important person in his life. But there was an important detail. He didn't know that he was hugging me, not his wife. He didn't know it was me, and not my aunt. And that truth, that distinction, filled the room with an unmatched tension. What would happen if he woke up and found out the truth? How would he react when he realized that he had confused my presence with that of my aunt? The idea filled me with anxiety and fear, but also with a strange emotion. Because, for a moment, I felt like I was sharing an intimate, personal moment with him, a moment that wasn't meant to be shared. But at the same time, he knew that this situation couldn't last forever. Sooner or later, he would wake up and have to face the reality of what had happened. And that meant he would have to face me, his niece, the one he had hugged in the dead of night without even realizing it. Despite everything, I allowed myself to enjoy the moment, the comforting feeling of his arms around me, and the warmth of his body against mine. Because, for a moment, I felt like I was in the right place, at the right time, sharing something special and unique with him. And so, I surrendered to the hug, letting time stop for a moment, while we immersed ourselves in the magic of the night. Because who knows, maybe I would never have the opportunity to experience something like that again, to share such an intimate and personal moment with him. There is a detail that I did not mention before, a small detail that now becomes more relevant than ever. He always looked at me more than he should, as if I were just another woman and not his niece. His gaze was charged with an energy that hinted at something more, an energy that made me feel loved and longed for in a way I couldn't explain. And not only that, but he also made suggestive jokes, naughty comments that hinted at an attraction beyond what was allowed. At first, I took it as simple jokes, as a way to break the ice and make the situation less awkward. But over time, those jokes began to weigh on me, making me question the true nature of our feelings. Did he feel the same as me? Or was he just playing with me, using those suggestive jokes as a way to hide his true feelings? The question scared me a little, but at the same time, it awakened a spark of hope in me. What if there was something more between us, something that transcended the bonds and became something deeper and more meaningful? The idea filled me with equal parts excitement and fear. On the one hand, I wanted his jokes to be more than just games, that they were a reflection of an attraction. But on the other hand, I was afraid of what that would mean for our family relationship, for my aunt. But now, in the darkness of the night and the warmth of her embrace, those thoughts and worries were taking a back seat. Because in this moment, it was just him and me, sharing an intimate and personal moment that transcended barriers. So I surrendered to the moment, letting the outside world disappear for a moment, while I enjoyed the night with him. Just when I was making up my mind, determined to let something else happen between us, I heard sounds outside the front door. My heart stopped for a moment, the sound breaking the atmosphere that enveloped us in the room. What was that noise? Who could it be at this time of night? The answer came too soon and filled me with panic. It was my aunt, the same one who had gone to the party that night. What was she doing here now? And most importantly, what would she think if she found me in the room with my uncle at this time of night? Fear overwhelmed me as I felt my aunt get closer to the room. She knew that she couldn't stay there, that she had to get out before she discovered me. So, with my heart in my throat, I got out of bed and ran out of the room, trying not to make the slightest noise that might alert my aunt to my presence. He walked on tiptoe, breathing heavily. What would happen if she discovered me? How would she react to seeing me there, in the room with her husband, at this time of night? She moved me around stealthily, trying to find a place to hide until my aunt enters. But every shadow, every dark corner, seemed to conspire against me, revealing my presence. Then, I found a safe place to hide and stayed there, holding my breath, as I listened to my aunt's footsteps getting closer and closer. And then, in an instant, the door to the room opened and light flooded the room. But when my aunt entered the bathroom, before she could say a word, before she could discover the truth of what was happening, I stood up from my hiding place and ran out of the room, leaving behind the chaos and confusion that had been there. Created. I need a chance to be alone with him once more, to explore what might have been if my aunt hadn't arrived so suddenly. Because there is something between us, something that goes beyond reason, something that makes me long for it.